Oh, welcome to the Gambling Gauchos. I'm Rob Bro. He's Kyle Jacobson. Money will join a little bit later on. He's watching a funeral. The Lakers return to Dallas with Luka Doncic. The last I looked, only him and Najee Marshall had scored more than 10 points. Maybe AD was cooking a little bit in the fourth quarter. But I hit my Doncic over 48.5 points, rebounds, assists with like 11 minutes to go in the fourth. So that's all I needed. Beyond that, we'll talk Texas Tech football today, spring football going on. We also have some Tim Tadlock discourse that's been happening in our Discord. If you went in the Discord, patreon.com/gamblinggauchos. We'll send you an invite to the Discord in the Patreon messages. If you're a part of the Patreon and are not in the Discord and want to be, send us a message on Patreon. That is the Payne Pal, Trude, and Chandler rundown. Payne Pal, Trude, and Chandler, a great law firm in West Texas people. Judges, mayors, people from Lubbock, people not from Lubbock, Clovis judges, all in West Texas, work in West Texas, doing a great job here and around the area. If you need a lawyer, Kyle, let's say you take your truck, your 2008 Ford F-150 with a grill guard, either dark blue steel or maybe like a dark red. Let's say you take one of those two trucks to a shop in October and they replace a $3,000 job of intake manifold and whatnot. And then about 2 weeks later, you take it back in and say, hey, I have a leak again. And they say, oh, yeah, we forgot to put clamps on the plugs in your manifold. And so you say, all right, well, we fix it. Yeah, we'll do that for free. And then about a month later, it's happening again. And they're like, oh, you know what? We use the cheap plugs. We'll use the better plugs this time. And then about 2 or 3 months later after that, you pass a truck on the interstate and the plugs pop out again. This is hypothetical, just to set up a law firm thing.
Has that ever happened to you?
Let's say they pop out again, and you're stuck in between Plainview and Lubbock on the interstate, and you crawl your way back to Abernathy to the 7-Eleven, and then the next day, you're like, all right, I could probably get home from Abernathy, and you get to, like, maybe Hill Center, then you have to call a tow truck to bring you back to Lubbock, and it costs $200, but you just take it to the place, the mechanic, because they fixed it before, and you're like, hey, guys, this is ridiculous. So they fixed it, and it actually works. It actually works. But then a month later after that, Kyle, let's hypothetically say you notice, like, a weird belt noise, right? It's kind of when your engine's running, idling. And then the day after you notice that noise, you get maybe 300 feet from your apartment or house. We don't know whose truck it was. And a pop happens again that sounds similar to the other ones, except instead of coolant steam blowing into your engine and cabin, it's just straight smoke. And it looks like you've hotboxed at 7:45 a.m. So you have to call your boss and get another tow truck and tow to the original place, and then tow it from the original place to somewhere else because you're fed up with them. So if that's happening and you want to sue a mechanic, you could call Payne Pal, Trude, and Chandler, and I'm sure they can help you out.
That ad read was 100% the Tim Robbins. Like two plumbers came to my house and started running around the couch saying, it's turbo time. And then you try to join them and they say, no, it's just us. We're the only ones doing turbo time. Has that ever happened to you? Not that happened to you, Rob, but like hypothetically if it did.
Yeah, hypothetical.
Yeah, that would be a good reason to sue. When I was off of the podcast for a while, serving my sentence for the incident, you were doing the ad read and you said Payne Pal, Truett, and Chandler. And I thought you said PayPal. And I was like, damn, like they got sponsored by PayPal. They must be making bank. And then I realized it was Payne, Powell,
Yeah.
Truett, and Chandler. Couple funny stories. Do we have time for
We got plenty of time, man.
Trey Payne, Matt Powell? So first off, Trey Payne, mayor of Lubbock, but kind of respect this one term. He pulled a Dirk West. Some tech fans maybe don't know this, but Dirk West, I think in like 1978 or 72 or something. I don't know, maybe not even close. Just decided like I'm gonna run for mayor. Everybody knew who he was. They liked him, so he won. And then he becomes mayor and is like, yeah, I don't really want to be mayor anymore. So he just stopped after one term, which is only 2 years. So I feel like that's kind of a baller move to be like, yeah, I'm just gonna like prove to everybody that I can be mayor if I want, and then peace out because I don't know, you got better things to do, I guess, than be mayor. I respect the Trey Payne Dirk West route there. Matt Powell one time was the guest speaker at a Lubbock Chamber of Commerce Young Professionals event that I was like kind of semi responsible for coordinating, and it was at like a, I don't want to say dive bar, but like a sports bar, like maybe not the venue you think of when you think of like Chamber of Commerce, and it was like a sports bar out on like Fourth and Frankfurt or somewhere, like also not kind of in the traditional central business district area of Lubbock or anything like that. And I don't remember what the turnout was, but like the sports bar owner was sort of like, hey, the chamber's supposed to host this event and bring these people to the sports bar or whatever. And um, my boss at the time was like, well, sorry, but like, how often does the assistant district attorney or whatever his title was at the time? I think it was assistant district attorney. He goes, how often does the assistant district attorney come to your establishment? He's like, oh, well, yeah, never. It's like, okay, well, you're welcome. So anyway, that was Matt Powell. That's the only time I've semi interacted with him. Thank goodness. I didn't have much interaction with the DA's office when I was in
You
Lubbock because I was a responsible citizen.
didn't need him professionally.
Yeah, and then as far as Pruitt and Chandler, never met him before. So, but sounds
Well,
like
Stevie
that's,
Barnett as well.
yeah, yeah. It sounds like it's
Coming home.
good company to be in.
I was doing a radio show last week, Kyle, and my co-host, we were talking in a break about the Gambling Gauchos for some reason, and he was like, "Now, how would I know that guy?" It's like, like what guy? He's like, "You're the guy you do that with. How would I know him?" I don't know, man.
Was he asking that? That's a weird way to ask that question. Did he mean like I'm pretty sure I know him? Like where do I know him from? Or
I don't know. I was like, have you done any work with the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce? He was there for a while. He was like, well, I was like, I don't know how you would know, man. He's a tech fan. He's been around.
I feel like there's multiple ways to interpret that. Like
Yeah.
one is like how in the hell would I know who that is, and the other is like oh I feel like I know that guy. What would I know him from?
Yeah. I don't know.
That's funny.
Do you know, have you ever met Mike Gustafson?
Yeah, I
Okay.
met
Well,
him at the 2022 Knights of Columbus kickoff dinner.
is that the one we went to together?
Yes,
Okay.
that was also. Um, are we on just Patreon right now, or are we on everything?
No, we'll be on everything. We could save it though for Patreon later.
No, it's fine. It's a quick Don Williams story. I didn't want it to devolve into like a whole Don Williams
Oh,
thing. But that night, I think it was Geo and like the Tech Football Twitter account were teasing that there was like a big announcement coming soon. Mind you, this is like early August, so it's still kind of off season, and so people were like, oh, new uniforms. What's the deal? What it wound up being was Patrick Mahomes is being inducted into the Ring of Honor. Um, which at the time, I think even I was kind of like, that's sort of a weird choice. Like he just finished, and
yeah.
then he went back to back the following 2 seasons, and I was like, well, that's a nice buy low spot there, Kirby. Good job. But anyway, Don knew that that was the big announcement that was being teased, and even like among friends at our table, because they were even saying like, stay tuned at 6 o'clock, and like he wouldn't spoil it for us even like 5 minutes ahead of time and be like, yeah, like don't tweet anything, but like Mahomes is going to the Ring of Honor. all that to say, if you're like a source who feeds journalists info and you don't want them to spill the beans, I would probably tell Don, because I wasn't like nobody was pressuring him, but it was like he was the guy at the table who knew, and it was like, oh, okay, like, you gonna tell us or um. But anyway, when I met Don Williams, it was very unceremonious. Um, I sat down and he goes, "Are you Kyle?" I said, "Yeah." And I didn't want to ask him like, "Are you Don Williams?" because I knew he was he was Don Williams. I felt like that was a
Yep.
stupid question. And so I don't know. Most people when you meet them, they say like, "Hey, I'm Don Williams," or "I'm Kyle. Good to meet you." But he just said, "Are you Kyle?" I said, "Yes." And I don't know if he at the time was a fan, hated me, indifferent, but that was the night I met Don Williams as well, and Mike Gustafson.
I'll refrain from digging into that any. All right, let's talk a little spring football. Speaking of Don Williams, nobody breaks injury news like Don Williams. Caleb Douglas on crutches after the scrimmage. David Collier wants you to know he also had that footage and news, but I credited David on the radio show I credited Don with David, and he was kind of offended, I think.
I can't
He wasn't.
remember. What was David's timeline at the chamber like? Did I know David yet at that point?
In 2022, that's a good question.
I can't. No, I think
Probably
it
pretty
was.
close to when he started.
No, I think I did know him. Yeah, but I didn't know that he knew that Mahomes was going to the Ring of Honor. So sorry, David. That was not an attempted slight at you.
No, I was talking about the Caleb Douglas injury news.
Oh, I thought we were going.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
we
moved
moved
on.
on from
We
the
moved
2022
on.
Knights of
We
Columbus
moved on.
dinner.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be an insane callback if we had just talked about that this week on the radio.
Yeah. Anyway,
uh,
that sucks about Caleb Douglas.
yeah. So hyperextended knee, no structural damage. They say short term rehab, but he's out for the rest of spring. Terrence Carter. Do you have any stats on him?
That would be the 6'2", 239-pound tight end out of ULala. They're actually just Louisiana now, but they used to be
Yeah.
Louisiana Lafayette, and ULala is fun to say, so I still call him ULala.
He has been mossing everyone at practice, it seems like. Seems like he's going to be a very, very good ad. I'm excited for him. A little Baron Morton news for you. Now, I just could kind of piecing some things together. In the What's Next podcast from Joey McGuire and Robert Giovanetti, airing on the Tech Athletics YouTube channel. I'm guessing it's other places, but I've been watching it on YouTube. Joey mentions that Baron Morton this is the latest episode. Joey mentions that Baron is getting into some soft tossing, some throwing. And in June, we'll go to Jacksonville, which I think is where he went last spring, and really get into some throwing and throwing to receivers and getting ready for fall camp. But I heard that a couple of days ago on the Joey McGuire What's Next podcast, I think on Monday morning. And then yesterday, or earlier today, they put out a Mac Leftwich quarterback drills video. And Baron Morton introduces himself, right? Baron Morton, born in Lubbock, Texas, which I thought was funny. And then he runs over, and I'm like, all right, he's not going to be in the rest of the video. No. He's catching balls from all the quarterbacks. He's the receiver in the drill. A couple of them are over his head. He goes up for them. No problem. Doesn't look like he's sore at all. And then he's zipping the ball back to the quarterbacks. So from that video, he has the ability to throw. He's just not, throwing 100 times and throwing with potential contact and everything else. So this is just me looking at a 30-second video of a coach quarterback drill and then using that context from Joey McGuire to say it seems like Baron Morton is doing well.
I don't think there's ever been a rising fifth year senior who has basically spent 2 full years as the starter,
Yeah.
who I've had such a poor time like pegging expectations for. And almost any other athlete who fits that same profile, I feel like you know what you're going to get. And I think because of his injury history, I and not knowing, like I know we're told, oh, he's got the surgery now, so he'll be fully recovered, all that. We were kind of spun up some version of that story last offseason. It was like, oh yeah, he's fine. He did this rehab thing, and I don't know. He was certainly serviceable. I mean, he started 11 games, 12 games. Didn't finish one, but yeah, he started all 12 games, 13 with the no, he didn't play the bowl game. But I don't know. It feels like maybe he was not like playing hurt, but not 100%. And of course, when he first emerged as like a spot starter in 2022, got hurt, before halftime against Oklahoma State in his first career start, and then got, hurt the shoulder on his first drive against West Virginia when he got his first action in 2023. And so we've never really seen him fully healthy for any actual length of time. And so I know we're being told again, like, oh yeah, nobody's ever recovered from surgery better than Baron Morton this offseason. So now, like, he'll finally be fully healthy. I don't know if that's true or not. Like, I guess I'm kind of just skeptical until we see it. But an old guy now, I feel like he was the next best thing, kind of viewed that way for so long, and now he's heading into his fifth year in college, which is kind of crazy. Has some experience, started a lot of games, played a lot of snaps, but I still don't. I feel like there's a very wide spectrum of potential outcomes for what Baron Morton looks like. The injury stuff, the new offensive coordinator, the health. I mean, all of it. Um, it'll be really fascinating, and yeah, I've never felt like I had such a poor read on a fifth year player before.
Joey also said that Baron Morton was getting stronger with his shoulder toward the end of the season, which I think checks out to how it looked. He made some deep throws in those last couple of games that we hadn't seen early in the year. He threw a couple deep to Caleb Douglas down the sideline. Was that against West Virginia? Maybe the week before against Oklahoma State as well. And Joey in the What's Next podcast with Robert Giovanetti and Joey McGuire said that his shoulder is already stronger now than it was at the end of the year. Still rehabbing. So it feels like Barron's going to be able to let it loose a little bit this season, hopefully.
Can I react aloud to that?
Sure.
Rob, would you say that I'm pro Joey McGuire?
Yes.
That I like Joey McGuire. I'm a fan of Joey McGuire.
Yeah.
Have I even probably defended him in some spots when other fans got frustrated with him?
Yes.
Do I want to continue seeing Joey McGuire lead this program long term? Rob is nodding. Having said that, he says things in the offseason that I have learned to just kind of like, oh, okay. It's like the coworker who like always lies to you about, they used to be an MMA fighter or something. You're like, okay, like I don't know if Joey ever vacillated between like overwhelmingly optimistic and hey, we had a really crappy day of practice today, or somewhere in the middle. I'm just gonna be like a realist about it. I might lend some credence to it, but I've just learned that if Joey is saying something in April, just pretend he said nothing at all. It doesn't mean that he's like intentionally trying to deceive you, or because some people do that. They're like, oh, he's a snake oil salesman. He's just lying to us all off season to sell tickets. I don't think that's true. I think he's just positive and optimistic to a fault. And so he says things that people take as gospel and they're like, oh, this is a factual accounting of reality, an objective point of view with no bias or slant whatsoever. and it's not that. It's a it's a guy whose entire MO is I'm an encourager, I'm a positive guy who lifts people up, which is awesome. Like that's great when you're working with student athletes, but it's not good for like a factual recounting of things that happened this off season or a healthy way to set expectations going into the next season. So I'm glad Joey says that Barron's shoulder is actually stronger than ever right after surgery, but that doesn't those kinds of statements from Joey anymore don't move the needle for me. It means nothing to me. And there's
Well,
nothing he could say about Barron's shoulder this offseason that would move the needle for me. Like I need to see it on August 31st or if there's an open practice or whatever. Until I see it, I just don't I'm sorry Joey, I love you. You know I love you. I just don't care what you have to say about Barron's shoulder.
I mean, to be fair, we're 3 months out from the surgery. It's not like he had it yesterday.
Yeah, he's also not throwing. Like
He's throwing. We saw
I
him
mean
throw.
not throwing for real.
Okay. Hey, I understand and agree with what you're coming to the table with.
And
I will
I'm
say
just
though, I
saying
have enjoyed Joey McGuire's podcast because it does give him an outlet to kind of get it out and not have to say it in press conferences.
I'm just saying it so I don't have to defend it in October when we lose a game that like I don't know, the other team runs the ball really well. And some guy will hit me up on Discord or try to be like, Joey said in this February press conference that this is the best defensive line we've ever. And I'm like, I know that Joey said that in February, but you can't take him at his word on stuff like that. It doesn't
Yeah,
mean that we actually have the best defensive line ever.
somebody just made a note to at me when Baron Morton throws his first duck against Tarleton State or whoever we're playing next year.
Yeah.
All right. You spoke about the defensive line. Let's get into it just a little bit. Uh, also in that podcast, he talked about David Bailey. David Bailey on the quarters system at Stanford. So he was in school, in class at Stanford maybe a week ago, graduated, transferred with the Andrew Luck firing of the former head coach and hiring of Frank Reich. When that happens, the portal at that school opens for 30 days. So he is in class, his coach gets fired, he graduates, he transfers to Texas Tech, and I assumed, right, well, he'll be there in the summer. Nope. Already on campus, practiced yesterday with the Red Raiders, committed, I think, Saturday or Sunday. Pretty cool. I don't know how it works academically. I would assume, you might know this, is grad school at Texas Tech, is that quarterly? So he joined a grad program. Is that true?
I don't know. The only thing I kind of remember about this is Oregon was also on quarters, which is why Tyler Shuck was able to join like the first spring that he did.
Yeah.
I think he also, finished at Oregon. And I think maybe by the time you're in grad school, so much of it is like online that it's not like totally go at your own pace, but I think they can be flexible where you're like enrolled. I don't know how they make that work, but I feel like if you're a four-star defensive end, our biggest position of need and the number one player in the portal, they can find a way to make you eligible.
Yeah, I don't care if the spring football athletes are in class.
I mean, we are,
I think you should probably be in class if you're playing real games,
yeah.
but the spring, it doesn't matter.
I mean, can we be serious about college sports in the NIL era? Like, we can just drop the whole school charade if we, like, he has a degree from Stanford. He's not coming here to play school. And so, whatever. He should go to class and, stay eligible because that's NCAA rules, but we don't have to pretend like he's an amateur athlete getting an education. Like, no, he's a
Right.
four-star dude, like, getting ready for the NFL.
How much does Stanford hate Texas Tech, by the way?
They should hate themselves because Stanford is not some broke alumni base. If they wanted to care about and invest in sports, they could. They actively choose not to. So hate us all you want, but to me, it's your own fault.
They hate us because they ain't us. Texas Tech football adding David Bailey on the On3 industry ratings. He's the number 3 player, I think. He's the number 1 player on the On3 ratings, but in the industry standard ratings, I think he's number 3. He's the number 1 edge player in the portal. Maybe he was number 9 in the industry standards, and he was number 3 in the defensive end edge portal, whatever it is. Romello Height was top 7 in the industry standard, or top 10. Maybe he was 9. Regardless, very good 2 ads on the edge. I think potential, both of them I think highly of. I think production, I think higher of David Bailey, obviously. I was a little unsure about Romello Height just because I'm still unsure about Romello Height because he hasn't produced, but David Bailey has the production. So I'm not worried about David Bailey at all. I think he can do that here as well. You also have 3 top 30 defensive tackles on the On3 industry standard rankings. You wrote them up on patreon.com/gamblingouches if you want some deeper thoughts on the 3 different defensive tackles. But that's the number 1 defensive tackle, Lee Hunter, the number 7 defensive tackle, Skylar Gill Howard, and the number 30 defensive tackle, Anthony Holmes Jr. So you have, I think, 6 of the top 60 portal players in this class of 18. I think you have 8 new starters on the defense. I think you have a starter or at least a 50-50 player at tight end in the 6'2 transfer 239 from ULA. You have 2 starters on the offensive line. You have a running back starter / big load guy. You have a starter at wide receiver. You went to the portal and added starting talent. So we'll have to see how that all works out, obviously, in the fall. But excited about the portal class so far.
Me too. I am going to do position by position deep dives. I don't know how everybody else was, but when the portal window was open in December, like, hate to brag, but we were getting so many commits like every single day. It was hard to be like, okay, Howard Sampson committed. Let me do a whole breakdown on like our future left tackle because 30 minutes later we had some other 4-star commit. And so I'm just going to go position by position on some notes. No film yet, but so yeah, like you said, Rob, we started with the interior D line. That's on Patreon, and then I guess we'll go to edge next. I kind of agree with your surface level assessment. Romello Height has always been like a highly rated guy coming out of high school. The transfer ranks, has played at blue blood esque programs. But if you just like blindfolded me and showed me his numbers, it probably wouldn't wow me. So I think there's a lot of hope kind of attached to him, but David Bailey's certainly the more productive player, guy with more skins on the wall. But the bottom line is everybody remembers how bad the pass rush was last year, so you need at least one of them to be hits, preferably both, and then preferably some guys you got coming up the ranks are hits as well. But even from the interior, those 3 guys that I looked at, all very good pass rushers from the interior. And so I know people traditionally think of pass rush coming off the edge, which is great. You didn't have that last year. Your best pass rushers were DeBraylon Carroll, an interior D lineman, and Jacob Rodriguez, an inside linebacker. So I would love to have some pieces like that, like guys that can force pressure from the interior, supplemented with guys that can actually um, cause problems on the edge. If you have all of that going at once, that's a good combo. We unfortunately just didn't have that last year, and it was noticeable at times. So all that to say, I think you're certainly headed in the right direction. But David Bailey was a massive add, not just because you had a top 5 portal class, and then you added, I think, the best or like highest rated individual player from the entire class. But it was, in my opinion, far and away the number one position of need on the entire roster as well. So the positional value of that commitment probably even greater than the star rankings and all that that's attached to it. So that was massive.
I'll also be very interested to see if David Bailey and Romello Height play the same position and they still have Isaac Smith or Joseph Adedire as kind of a stouter run stopper at the other edge position, outside linebacker position, because they're different positions. I don't know, dog and anchor or something. So I would be interested to see if you have basically maybe three kind of defensive tackle-esque, bigger, stouter defensive linemen, and then the edge rusher. And then on third down or second and long or passing situations, you just put them all out there and get a little crazy. We welcome in Ryan Mainville, Money Mainville, to talk a little basketball. Let's do a couple of hits before we move to the Patreon on the basketball stuff. Kyle, did you have any final thoughts on spring football or David Bailey?
Not right now. Like I said, I kind of just started diving into like the portal class and some of the spring ball video clips and audio clips that are out there. So we'll have more and more of that on Patreon coming soon. Going to try to do at least like one football related post per week that we can then kind of banter about on the podcast. But no, yeah, I think that's all for now.
Money, any thoughts on spring football?
Bailey seems pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think, for me as kind of somebody who doesn't live and breathe the advanced analytics of college football, or is like really grinding tape outside of just tech related stuff, I think it's always really interesting for me to see like the national perception of a addition or subtraction to this team. And by all accounts, like I went into the remainder of this offseason thinking, probably Hunter's going to be the biggest add on the defensive line, maybe even on the defense in general, maybe your whole team. But then to see Bailey kind of obviously make his decision to transfer after their coaching change and then ultimately land at Texas Tech, I feel like I just saw a lot of like NFL draft adjacent guys talking about it, guys who are paid to cover college football at a national level, talking about how big of an addition this was. So I'm excited about that. It's always hard to kind of contextualize those things when you're on the outside looking in, but really does feel like a monumental ad and kind of just at the same time so predictable based on kind of what your MO has been this offseason. I think it's easy to expect additions like this, but based on the coverage it's getting, this is a pretty unique position that Texas Tech has found itself in, not just compared to what it's done historically, but just in the college football landscape in general right now. It just feels like you are destined to get those guys. And I don't know like what other program can really hang their hat on that right now.
Can I say something without y'all freaking out?
You think Chris Beard is a good basketball coach?
Yes, but that's beside the point. Somebody early on said that Skylar Howard was small. Do you know what his measurables measure as? Is like a pro comp from college?
Are you going to say something like Aaron Donald?
Not something like Aaron Donald. Out of it.
Yeah.
Now, Aaron Donald added like 30 pounds of muscle when he got to the NFL. So I'm not saying you're going to see, the Hulk, but shorter leverage, that kind of stuff, it works sometimes. And I would like to see that. Obviously, I think Skylar Howard will start or play a lot of snaps. I don't know exactly how these lineups. You might have, Lee Hunter at the one. You could be playing a 3-and-1 technique. The guard and the nose. You could be straight up threes. I'd have to watch more of what Houston did last year, but excited about the versatility because I think all three defensive tackles do different things. I think the two edges do different things, and you still have Jaden Cofield. Another video. Joey McGuire, man, he can't help himself. They did a video on Tech Football that said what players are you most excited about through the spring, and other players are like this guy, that guy, whoever. Joey gets on there, names like 6 of the biggest dudes on the roster, and he's just like, I love big guys. And then he's like, and you gotta love big guys who run the football. Jaden Cofield. I ran that up the flagpole and have yet to get a solid answer, but could be a Jalen Hutchings type thing, or maybe he scooped and scored in a practice that we didn't see, and had some cool moves. But that is on their Twitter account. Big guys who run the football. Jaden Cofield. That's from Joey McGuire.
I will say on Skylar Gill Howard, who I'm calling SGH, he's listed at 6'1", meaning he's probably 5'11 and a half. And he, coming out of high school, was a linebacker at the D2 level. And there's like clips of him in high school running 7-on-7. I guess he's playing like slot or tight end. He's like running drag routes over the middle. So he's not just like some chubby dude that's taking up space. He's obviously added a lot of weight since then to move from linebacker at the D2 level to now interior D line at the power 4 level. But I feel like it's one thing if you're a guy who can move, who adds weight, versus if you're just a guy that was kind of like born big, you've always been big. Those types tend to not be quite as nimble. I think that's more of like a Lee Hunter, no shade. He can move well for his size too, in his own right. But yeah, I think SGH looks pretty quick. Like, I'm not gonna do the Aaron Donald comp like you did, Rob, but Aaron Donald could move in a way that was kind of unfair for an interior defensive lineman. Didn't look like Vince Wilfork or Pat Williams out there, and SGH has that kind of athleticism where he can move laterally, he can chase down runners in the backfield. I mean, he's not just like some fat dude chasing people. So anyway, we'll see. But yeah, I like the cut of his jib.
It's like the kid who grows up playing point guard and then grows to be 7 feet. It's like Chet Holmgren or Wembanyama, whatever. I'll be getting roasted for mispronouncing names on the radio. I don't care. Don't tell people I care. All right, Money, let's shift to basketball. I want to do this chronologically. I want to do who has returned and committed, and then we'll cut it off and talk about who might be coming. Does that work for you?
Sure.
All right, so let's do chronologically who announced they're coming back and start with Christian Anderson. You've been high on Christian Anderson all year long. We started.
Kyle just dipped.
He didn't even just go off cam. He completely left the room. You've been very high on Christian Anderson. You were the first one to kind of clue me in to the FIBA stuff this summer. With Team Germany, I think in November you're talking about how good he could be as a freshman. And then like before he even played for Texas Tech, you're talking about it. And then you kind of move on through the season. You're in all the most threes at this point, Shot 42% from 3 in Big 12 play, I believe. Had a very good Big 12 season. He finished at 38%. But if you don't take the tournament numbers, I think he finishes above 40. Is that true?
It's close to it, yeah.
So a very good season as a freshman. And it seems like with him recommitting at whatever dollar figure he recommits at, it seems like a piece that you're truly building around, not just a piece that's going to be a builder for. He's like if you have a pyramid of success, right? You've got this cornerstone and this cornerstone, and they're the two guys that recommitted. It's Christian Anderson and JT Toppin. So what do you think about Christian Anderson's I hate that it's even a decision, but I guess decision to return?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to give you a little plug, saw you wrote an article on doublet97.3.com today about how this is a guy who's really a future superstar. and a piece that you can truly build around. Very high on him, as you mentioned, coming into the year because the shot making was just so prolific. And that's always something that translates on what volume it translates at is always a conversation. But you just don't forget how to shoot the basketball. Guys that do it at the clip that he was doing it at just don't do that. So obviously really high on that throughout the year. The shot making was there, obviously finished with the most threes by Red Raider freshman in program history, and then just completely turned into one of your best on-ball defenders. Just vicious at the point of attack, very active hands. He's lengthy. He can stay in front of guys. And so you've got this really well-rounded player. And, heading into the tournament, I was a little bit worried about his draft stock getting a little high and that guy maybe not being a part of your team next year. Obviously does not have the tournament that I think he wanted to have. Not to say it was a complete failure, but just, especially opening weekends, certainly a slow start. But I think with him, if you just take it at face value, right, and we say, all right, worst case scenario, we get Christian Anderson from last year again. I think you're willing to pay whatever you paid him to be that. But I think what's really exciting about him is I think there's still so much potential, specifically as it relates to his playmaking, where his ceiling could be pretty high and like first round draft pick high. It's going to be hard to beat out where Jarrett Culver was selected in the NBA draft. But I think this guy has a real shot of leaving Lubbock as probably your best pro prospect in a while, at least since Culver. And I think he's just got that level of shot making already. The defense is coming around. I think if he can put a couple more pounds on and showcase some more playmaking, which he'll have plenty of opportunities to do so with JT Toppin out of the pick and roll, he's going to be a very, very valuable player for an NBA franchise. And so I'm glad he's back. I mean, I really do think that there's still a ton that can be tapped into here and can make him an all Big 12 player lock.
Speaking of all Big 12 players, JT Toppin also back in. I don't like saying numbers to NIL contracts if I don't know them for sure, if I haven't seen them publicly, but I saw from maybe like a Matt Norlander type today, the $4 million number. And allegedly Christian Anderson's number is more than we've seen for a basketball player so far at Texas Tech. $4 million, I think, it's not my money, so I have a hard time saying it's, worth it or appropriate because it's not my money. I don't care what they spend as long as he's good, right? So excited for JT Toppin to come back at any price point. But I think like market value, if you're spending $2 for a great Osobor last year, I think JT Toppin certainly outperformed him. If you're spending $3.5 for Robert Wright, who wasn't even the best freshman on his own team. Did you see the clip of the freshman going to BYU next year saying that was a false number? He's not getting paid. That was weird. So whatever you're paying these guys, it seems like 4 is an appropriate market value for a conference player of the year returning, especially to the same team. Very excited for JT Toppin. And, somebody today was like, well, we've seen guys like that regress. It could have been his best year ever. It's like, yeah, okay. So if he makes, 16 points a game and 9 boards instead of 18 and 10, fine. Okay, if he gets 9 double-doubles instead of 15, okay, we'll be fine. I think JT Toppin at any level of JT Toppinness, especially how he closed, is worth it to bring back. And There's a reason over the weekend that John Fanta and John Rothstein are putting Texas Tech as top 10 teams next year in the way too early stuff. He's a huge reason you finished 8th in this final AP poll. Somebody I saw today say that, and we'll talk about this later, but if Darian Williams returns, they're a top 2 team and maybe not 2 in the preseason rankings. So you have some pretty good action there with JT Toppin returning. Talk about what am I, a second-rate journalist? What are your thoughts on JT Toppin?
Yeah, I mean, whatever he's getting paid, it's worth. Certainly seems it is around that $4 million mark. Worth every penny. My minimal contributions to the Matador Club were certainly a huge part of bringing him back. So you're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But I mean, I even saw a tweet today that was like, this guy could potentially be like preseason national player of the year. And it's like, yeah, no shit. Like, this guy's a second team All-American, maybe in the conversation for first team, all Big 12 player of the year, scored 40 points in a single game, was overall one of the most productive players in the country for the final 2 months of the season. Like, bringing a guy like this back is huge. It's huge for your team. It's huge for, I think, what it says about the college basketball landscape in general right now. And I'm really excited because I think with the regression conversation, there's not really a lot that you can look to and say, yeah, there's a good potential that he regresses next year. In fact, I actually think it's the opposite. I think if he's healthier this past season, he has the most productive season as a Red Raider that anyone in program history has had. And so, in fact, I think there's a lot of room for opportunity to say, if the shot improves, if he can get a little bit better at on-ball defense, and if he can just continue to make shots around the rim the way that he did last year while staying healthy, he's a first-team All-American National Player of the Year finalist, if not winner. Like, there's a lot that makes you optimistic, and I think that's why, with or without Darian Williams, I think bringing this guy back makes you a preseason top 10 team in April, which means nothing, but I think you have that level of talent on your team.
Off the top of my head, Buddy Hield, the last back-to-back All Big 12 Player of the Year winner.
Did he play 2 seasons?
Maybe the only. Kyle, you unmuted. Did you have something on JT Toppin?
I would love it if JT Toppin developed a Bryson Williams level 3-ball. Bryson Williams, from what I recall, Money, you can check me on the numbers. I don't think he shot them at volume, but he found his spots 2 or 3 times a game, and if he was open, he would make you pay. Like, I don't think he could have been a 40% shooter at O'Banner's volume, or certainly not like a guard's volume. But if JT Toppin could consistently go like 1 for 3, maybe 2 for 5 if we're feeling crazy, again, if they're the right spots and they're not contested 3-pointers, on top of his back to the basket game and rebounding prowess, that would be not an easy element to add, because I know it's difficult to make 3-pointers for some people, not me. But if he had that in his repertoire, I don't know. It's kind of hard to imagine him being at another level, but that is like one way that he could level up his game and become even more dynamic, which would be frightening, but really cool.
Trivia time. There have been 2 two-time All Big 12 Player of the Years.
TJ Ford.
No. One of them was Buddy Hield.
It's got to be a Kansas dude, right?
Yes. TJ Ford.
Mario Chalmers?
Was not Player of the Year, by the way. Not Mario Chalmers.
Who was a Kansas? Kirk Heinrich? Who was a Kansas guy that was there a long time?
Perry Ellis.
Nick Collison.
Nick Collison won in 2003.
Oh.
It's Marcus Morris won it. Kevin Durant and PJ Tucker won it back-to-back. Drew Good and Nick Collison won it back-to-back. Marcus Fizer and Jamal Tinsley from Iowa State won it back-to-back. But the only other back-to-back winner from the same mother, the same name, the same person, as opposed to the same team, Rafe LaFrentz. In the first 2 seasons of Big 12 conference play, Rafe LaFrentz in 97 and 98. I'm unsure if Rafe LaFrentz also won the Big 8 Player of the Year in 1996. He could have been a 3-timer. And then, again, Buddy Hield in 15 and 16. So JT Toppin with an opportunity here to do something that hasn't been done since 2016. And before that, 1998.
I'm over here sweating that trivia question. Like, man, I'm about to be such a casual when you say like Blake Griffin or something. I don't think I would have pulled that one out.
Hey, Money.
I've looked at that list a bunch of times. Never looked down that far, I guess, because I've never seen the name Rafe LaFrentz.
Money, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
I feel like part of the way that people in this world can show love for one another is by being honest and truthful with each other. As the greatest basketball mind that I personally know, rank my guesses for other 2-time Big 12 Players of the Year, like scale of 1 to 10 in terms of how realistic or credible they were. And be brutally honest with me.
TJ Ford was a good one. Mario Chalmers was a good one. I was thinking Devontae Graham at Kansas, but I think he only played 1 season and might have been a backup through that time.
Yeah, Frank Mason and Devontae Graham went back-to-back.
Oh.
They're both Kansas.
Who's that?
Kansas guards.
Who's that dude at Oklahoma State when they were really good in like 03, 04? John Lucas?
Well, Tony Allen won in 2004.
Marcus Smart. Did he win Player of the Year or just DPOY?
Marcus Smart in 2013 won Player of the Year. Before him was Thomas Robinson from Kansas.
Did my cousin-in-law Rob Lewandowski ever win it?
I'm looking here. I don't believe so. I think Jarrett Culver was the first Red Raider.
Dang. Money, do you remember Rob Lewandowski?
I do not.
Do you know the story about how he's my, cousin-in-law?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so his wife is cousin to the man that married my sister. So my brother-in-law's cousin married Rob Lewandowski. And so when I was a freshman at Tech, we went 1 and 17 in Big 12 play. And we were walking around campus. I was with some friends, and like we heard the victory bells ring, and it was like mid-January. And we're like, what is that for? Like, what sport is even being played right now? Like, surely the basketball team didn't win. And I pulled up the ESPN app, and we like beat OU that day. I was like, wouldn't you know it? So Rob Lewandowski came to, when he was like playing pro ball in Europe for a couple years, he came back to Lubbock and was hooping at the Rec during freshman orientation. And they gave him like one of the orientation shirts that they give all the freshmen. And so he's just like obviously demolishing people, and he looks like a 30-year-old man because he's like 6'9", has a beard. And all these kids are like, do you play for Tech? Or they're like, who are you? And he was like, oh, no, I'm just like here for orientation. I'm just some freshman. And they thought he was just an incredible basketball player, but he was, they didn't know they were playing with a guy who was like actually playing pro ball in, I think like Poland or somewhere. So anyway, he's one of the top 2 Tech athletes turned pro that I've ever played sports with at the Rec during orientation.
Who was the other, Kyle?
It was actually Patrick Mahomes, quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, I played dodgeball with him one time at the Rec Center.
I knew you wanted to get that one in. Were you being sincere earlier today when you said my joke about JT Toppin was good, or was that a...
No, that was really funny.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, because in that picture is from the game where he, incidental contact, but was ejected, but we won anyway.
Well,
yeah.
Refs
So
tried to rip us off.
Kicking the nuts is like a turn of phrase, but also quite literally what precipitated that now historic photo.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, that was good. That was good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. Another trivia question, Kyle. This one's for you. I was going to do this earlier with Baron Morton. I forgot. Baron Morton has the same quarterback record as another Texas Tech quarterback since 2000. Who's that quarterback?
Is this all games or just start and finish?
In games he's started.
Okay. Let's see. Morton, when he started, is I think 14-6. Is there one I'm missing? I think he's 14-6 when he starts. He's 14-4 when he starts and finishes, and that's while playing hurt, by the way. Let's say he's 14-6. I don't know if that's right. Who else would be 14-6 since 2000? Cliff and Graham started too many games. Cumby, Hodges, and Simmons all did not start enough. I don't think Daggy was. No. 14-7.
It's right there.
I
It's
don't know.
14-6, 15-8, something. Oh,
Okay,
you
who
were
else is?
you were locking in, man. You were right there. You skipped him.
Is it Potts?
It's Potts.
Yeah.
Which
That sounds about right.
I counted Nick's games, but it is Taylor Potts. So he's the guy who has the most wins. I think Barron already has more wins than Seth Daggy, but he played about the same amount of games. So Baron Morton right now the most wins since Taylor Potts. I'd have to go back and look at all of Graham Harrell's wins. I doubt he could get there unless he went 16-0. But
Yeah,
that'd be a thing.
There was this stat I found because Graham Harrell and Cliff Kingsbury are technically Super Bowl champions,
Yes,
and of course
technically
Mahomes.
they are.
Right.
Yeah, they are.
Mahomes is also technically a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah.
But the three of them are the guys that have started the most games at Tech, and so I ran the numbers one time, and I think Daggy was just behind Mahomes. Is that right? Well, no, Daggy was a 2-year starter. Oh, I guess Mahomes was 2 plus some. Okay. Anyway, I just picked the number, so it just so happens that the 3 Tech quarterbacks that have won a Super Bowl have also started the most games. And so I made up some stat that any Tech quarterback who's ever started 27 games has gone on to win at least one Super Bowl. And so I think Morton will, barring catastrophic injury where he's out for the season, he will hit that number. And so, I guess that means he's going to be a Super Bowl champion someday. Yeah. So that's good for him if he can. I think he needs to stay healthy 3 or 4 more games, and he'll win a Super Bowl like Harrell and Kingsbury did.
Nice. I'm in. All right, the final. Let's go back to basketball for a second. The final guy we want to talk about, Tyree Bryan from Santa Clara. Also played D1 basketball. He also played D1 baseball. Basketball at Charleston Southern. Yes, basketball.
Yep.
And I guess some JUCOs before that because it only showed 3 years, but he was a sophomore, junior, senior. Correct me if I'm wrong. I would classify this 6'5" guard as a 3-and-D guy. Steal a game, 10 blocks total last season. So he's not out misdirecting a ton of shots, but I think 10 is decent for what he's doing. Steal a game, I think he had 36 total last year, 42% three-point shooter at volume, and that's across the last 3 seasons. I think he's 41% at volume over 3 years. So it's not like he just had a big season last year. Now, his free throw percentage, it seemed dipped a little bit last year, but he just doesn't shoot free throws very often. It's not part of his game to. It seems like just in the very limited highlights I watched, He certainly can get to the rim, but it's more of a Elijah Hawkins finesse. I'm trying to make the shot. I'm not trying to draw contact kind of thing. So 3-and-D wing, 6'5". If I had to say who he's like, I think, I don't know, Chance McMillan-ish. A little bit different skill set, but if you're just having to do the thing where you say he's like another Tech player from the past, similar production, I guess, to Chance McMillan, at least before he got here, the kind of a Grand Canyon-esque Chance McMillan. So your thoughts on Tyree? That is Tyeree, kind of like Kyler Thompson on the baseball team. That is Kyeler. So Tyree Bryan, that's Bryan, Kyle. Thoughts on him?
Yeah, I don't know if there's been a player in the McCaslin era that resembles him. And I think it's a really good thing that that's the case and that it's being remedied. Because I think, especially this past season, you really could have used a guy like this. A guy who is lengthy, athletic, primarily plays off the ball, can make shots, can play in transition, and is a plus defender. I would have thought that the closest player to him from last season would be Kerwin Walton. And if you look at the play style and kind of their roles, I think that's probably the case. Just primarily catch and shoot guys, don't get to the rim a lot, which, Rob, you're seeing reflected in those free throw numbers and just the fact that it's very low volume. But guys who are pretty much just told, like, find your space and then make your shots when the ball hits your hands. But I think this is a pretty dynamic player and a player who's certainly more dynamic than Kerwin Walton is, all due respect to Dr. K. But a guy who looks really, really good in transition, which is always a good sign of kind of developing some things in the half court where he's asked to initiate his own offense. Again, don't think that'll be his primary role, but if you can develop it, it's always a good thing. And a guy who, to me, what's really stood out on tape, other than the shot making, which is at a very high level, he's always moving off the ball. This isn't a guy who's just kind of camping in the corner waiting for something to happen or waiting for the ball to fall in his lap. He's moving a lot and he's cutting a lot. And that's reflected in his offensive rebounding numbers. He's really good on the glass, especially for his size. And like you said, on those cuts, he's able to score around the rim. He's got a little bit more size and a little bit more weight than Kerwin does too, which makes him stronger around the rim, which is a really good thing. But a unique player and a guy who there's not an easy player to point to and be like, yeah, this is the player comp, in recent Texas Tech history. I mean, the closest one might even be Adonis Arms. But in my mind, Adonis Arms, a much better playmaker and probably a better defender. But in terms of activity and athleticism and length, that's kind of who this guy reminds me of.
Can I throw a name out there?
Do it.
I don't. This is no shade at the player I'm about to mention, but I don't think this is what we hope this cat turns into. But I think it's a fair comp in terms of like age, 3-point prowess, 3-point volume, maybe even size a little bit. But Demarion Williams, I think he was listed at 6'5". I think he was actually 6'2", but he was listed at 6'5" and was like a 39% 3-point shooter at an insane volume. And obviously didn't really work out here. He never really became much more than kind of a minimal role player. I hope that's not the same fortune that Tyreek is going to experience here, but I do see some similarities between the two without seeing any like film or knowing anything about athleticism, but just in terms of their profile coming in. So I hope obviously we get bigger impact than Demarion Williams, but I can see a little bit of parallel there.
Yeah, maybe even some Kevin Overton with the low usage that he had on the ball at Drake prior to this season, but it still kind of felt like maybe that was something you could tap into. You didn't really see that happen this year, but I feel better about it happening with Tyree Brian, excuse me. We we each just said his name wrong. It's really bad. But hey, he committed earlier today.
Tyreek
So
and a bright.
I thought it was Tyreek. That's my bad.
Yeah, Tyree.
we'll get there by November.
spelled it
Don't
for you.
worry.
I was talking about Tyreek Smith. Does he have any eligibility left?
He does. Apparently, he's an NBA draft prospect.
Yeah, he's at Kansas State.
Yeah, he's on like school number 7 now.
Yep.
That's crazy.
No, I'm excited about this guy. If you look at there's a website I've become really fond of called CBB Analytics, and they have some play-by-play player comparisons based on usage, advanced analytics, and the players that have the closest similarity score to Brian from this past season are Chance McMillan with an 80.7 similarity score and Christian Anderson, which is 80.6. I think what that really tells you is this is a guy who's going to live off the ball, like each of those two guys did, but still will be a high-level shot maker when the ball does reach his hands, is still a capable playmaker. And what I think is really similar with Chance in this case is the rebounding ability, the ability to trace balls off the rim, be active around the glass. And he's got, again, more size than I think either of those guys have, or a guy like Demarion Williams. Again, 6'5", but he looks a little bit bigger than that on film. I think he's 6'5", 215 is his listed specs. He looks bigger than that to me, man. He's got a closer body type to like a Chibuzo Agbo, Adonis Arms type than he does, Demarion Williams. I think he's a little bit more of a true wing in that sense, which again is something I think you've been lacking a little bit over the last 2 years.
All right, final thoughts on the additions, or maybe some broad insight to what types of players I think they might be looking for.
Yeah, guards. I mean, that's been the case since day one. It's especially true now that you've locked in JT Toppin, because you feel really good about that being your primary option down low. Whether you supplement that with Federico coming back, still don't know the case on that, or you go get another rotation big out of the portal, which you're probably going to have to grab a 4 at some point now. But I think guards are obviously top priority, trying to fill the holes of Kerwin Walton and Chance McMillan, which I think Brian does a little bit of that. But then obviously Elijah Hawkins, what do you do at primary ball handler? Do you want to bring in a true lead guard? Do you want to let Christian Anderson run the offense, or do you want it to kind of be a by committee approach with a couple of combo guards who are capable on the ball, but really just try to distribute, take advantage of the space and create open shots, which I'm a huge proponent of. Houston has been doing that for years. They usually have one guy who's pretty strong on the ball and initiating, but it's really hard to tell who on their team is the lead guard at times. Even, this past season, an obvious example was Sharp, Cryer, and Uzan, but then the year before, Shed and LJ Cryer playing side by side too. It was always hard to tell who the true lead guard was on that team. And I really like that approach, especially when you've got a big guy down low kind of creating space for those guys who can run out of the pick and roll. I think that's a good approach, and it seems to be the case, at least so far in this portal cycle.
Yeah, I'll be really curious to see who emerges as the PBH. That's primary ball handler. Rob and other listeners who may not know what that means.
That's right.
Yeah, I know B, man. I know B. I just saw a really funny tweet. I want to get your thoughts on this, but we're going to do it on the Patreon. I'll put it in the mailbag. Thank you to the YouTube audience. Thank you to the Republic of Football feed audience. Big fans of what they're doing over there at the Republic of Football. Obviously, Dave Campbell's magazine. Look for that to start trickling out with some news and content from the spring. Mike Craven was in town this weekend when it snowed. Was not prepared, he said. He got out of his car in 80-degree weather clothing, and it was already like 42, about to snow in Lubbock when he got here. So welcome in. But he's, I think, since been at TCU. He said that Sonny Dykes said this is the most talented roster he's ever coached. So we'll see how that goes for Sonny Dykes in 2025. Otherwise, appreciate it. If you want to listen to the mailbag, if you want to listen to who Texas Tech is targeting according to Money Mainville, you can do so on Patreon, patreon.com/Gambling Gauchos. So check us out there. 11018. All right. Love y'all.